Walk into a stone hut tucked into the side of an Appalachian hill, and the first thing you notice is the cold. It's August outside. Inside, the air is in the low 50s. Cold water bubbles up through the floor and runs in a slow stream through a stone trough. There are milk crocks sitting in the water, and the milk inside them has been keeping fresh for days. No ice. No electricity. There never was. Mountain families had a working refrigerator decades before the electric one was invented. They didn't pay a bill on it. They built it once, and it ran for 100 years on nothing but cold water from the ground. Here's what a spring house is, why it stays 50 degrees in the worst heat of summer, and what's still worth stealing from it today. A spring house was a small, simple building, usually one room, often built of stone or thick logs, sometimes half buried into the hillside. The whole point of it was its location. It was built directly over a cold spring where groundwater bubbled up to the surface year-round. Inside, the spring water didn't just disappear. It flowed through a shallow stone trough running through the building, then out the downhill side and on down the holler. That moving water was the engine of the whole thing. It carried the cold up out of the earth and into the room, kept it moving so it never warmed up, and ran 24 hours a day in every season, asking nothing. You'll find the bones of these spring houses all over Appalachia today. Walk a back trail on an old homestead and you'll see them, sometimes still intact, sometimes just a stone foundation half swallowed by ivy. The door usually faced north, away from the afternoon sun. The roof was thick and shaded by trees if the family could manage it. Every part of the design was aimed at the same job: keep this room cold, free of charge, forever. Here's the part that sounds like magic, but is just physics. A few feet down into the ground, the soil holds a remarkably steady temperature all year. Deeper than that, groundwater settles to roughly the average annual air temperature of the region. In most of Appalachia, that's somewhere around 50 to 55 degrees. It doesn't care that it's 90 degrees in July or 20 degrees in January. The Earth is a giant thermal flywheel, and the water that flows up through it brings that steady cold to the surface. A spring is just groundwater finding its way out. So spring water in the mountains runs about 50 to 55 degrees, year in and year out. Cold enough to keep milk from souring for days. Cold enough to firm up butter. Cold enough to slow down everything that wants to spoil your food. The mountain folks couldn't have explained any of that the way I just did. They didn't need to. They knew the spring was cold, they knew it stayed cold, and they built the cleverest possible house around it to make that cold useful. That's the whole story. A working spring house was the food storage hub of the homestead, and there was a careful order to how it was used. The cold water trough was the prime spot. Heavy stoneware crocks of fresh milk and cream went straight into the running water, submerged up to the neck. The water carried the heat right out of them. By the next morning, the cream had risen to the top and the milk below was still sweet, fresh enough to drink, churn into butter, or set into clabber for cheese. The stone shelves above the water level held the things that didn't need to be submerged but still wanted the cold. Pats of fresh butter wrapped in cheesecloth. Aging rounds of homemade cheese, slowly forming a rind. Baskets of eggs on cool slate. A few cuts of fresh meat for the next day or two. Anything beyond that went to the smokehouse or the salt barrel. The spring house had a rhythm to it. You went down in the morning to fetch the day's milk and bring the cream in for churning. You went down in the evening to put away the day's gathering. The cold did the rest. Children grew up running back and forth from the house to the spring house, and the path between the two was usually worn smooth by generations of bare feet. If this is the kind of mountain knowledge you want more of, our free Appalachian Almanac goes out every Sunday. One real method, sourced and tested, in your inbox. Links in the description. Now, what happened to the spring house? Spring houses didn't disappear because somebody banned them. They disappeared because something easier came along, and then something easier than that. First came the icebox. Folks would cut blocks of ice from ponds in winter, store them in an ice house packed in sawdust, and run a cold piece into a wooden cabinet through summer. The icebox went indoors. It worked for anyone, not just a family with a spring on their land. The spring house started becoming optional. Then the electric refrigerator arrived in town, and finally, slowly, out into the country. Rural electrification reached most of the Appalachian hollers between the 1930s and the 1950s, and once the wires came in, the mechanical fridge in the kitchen quietly outcompete the stone hut in the yard. The fridge was closer. It was always there. It didn't depend on having a spring, and it kept things colder than 50 degrees, which mattered for the kinds of food the supermarket was starting to sell. So the spring house fell out of daily use. Not because there was anything wrong with it. Many still work perfectly today, but because the world around it changed. The Mountain families who'd grown up using them often kept theirs running for milk and butter long after the kitchen fridge arrived, because there was no good reason to stop. The thing already worked. The honest answer about using one today: a true spring house only makes sense if you have a cold spring on your land. Most people don't. The principle, though, is still useful. If you have a clean, cold creek or spring on a homestead, a small modern spring box, basically a sealed, food-safe container that sits in the cold water, gives you a free chill for drinks, fresh produce, and short-term storage. Off-grid families still build these. Campers do a version of it with a sealed bag in a creek. The chemistry hasn't changed. Cold running water still pulls heat out of whatever you put in it, and it'll do that as long as the water keeps running. If you don't have a spring, the next best mountain technology is the root cellar, and we'll get into how that uses the same earth cold without needing running water in the next video. And here are the honest caveats, because this channel doesn't sell you fairy tales. Spring water in the mountains used to be clean enough to drink straight from the rock. In a lot of places today, groundwater can carry contamination from farms, septic systems, and old industry. If you're using a spring or creek for food cooling, even just the outside of a sealed container, get the water tested, and don't drink it without filtration or boiling, no matter how clear it looks. 50-degree water is the right cold for a fridge, but it is not cold enough for long-term storage of raw meat. A spring house was an everyday cold room, not a freezer. The Mountain families knew that, which is why the smokehouse and the salt barrel handled what the spring house couldn't. Anyone telling you a stone hut in the yard preserves meat for months on its own is leaving out half the system. There's also the simple fact of supply. A spring house only works while the spring is running. Drought, changes in the local water table, and modern groundwater pumping have killed off springs that used to flow year-round. A lot of the old spring houses you'll see in Appalachia today sit dry over springs that gave out a generation ago. The technology was perfect. The resource underneath it isn't always there anymore. The spring house wasn't magic. It wasn't a secret. It was a careful, patient use of something that was already there: cold groundwater, free for the cost of building a small house around it. That's the pattern over and over in mountain life. The hill folks didn't have money to spend on monthly conveniences, so they put the work in once and let nature carry the load forever. A stone hut over a spring did the same job your electric refrigerator does, and it did it without a power bill, without a compressor, and without ever needing to be replaced. The building outlasted everyone who built it. The wider lesson is the same one we keep coming back to in these videos. The Mountain families looked at the resources around them: the cold under the ground, the slope of the hill, the way water finds its level, and they put their building skill where the resource already was. They didn't fight the land. They worked with it, and the land paid them back every day for 100 years. Your refrigerator does in this century what the spring house did in the last. The only difference is one of them runs on the cold the earth provides for free, and the other one runs on a meter that ticks every month for the life of the house. 2 ways to keep the milk cold. The mountains picked the one that didn't keep asking. The historical references on Appalachian spring houses, the groundwater temperature data, and the safety notes on modern spring water are linked in the description. If you want all of these mountain methods in one place, the Appalachian Way Field Guide has 47 of them with the original sources behind each one. Link below. Real methods, real sources, real history. That's the Appalachian Way. We'll see you Wednesday.